And good morning. Welcome to Focus on Stafford County. Steve Webster with you, our once-a-month visit with the staff from Stafford County Economic Development. Carolyn Dunn, director, in with us. Also, Assistant Director Kathleen Norman joining us here on the program. Carolyn, thanks for deciding to join us this month. I really appreciate it. I'm just giving you a hard time, too.
Well, thanks. It's fun to be here. I know I have missed a couple months, but it's fun to be back.
Well, when you have good help, that's what happens, right?
So true.
Kathleen
Very
Norman
true.
in with us today. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi, Steve.
Okay. Where do you want to start today?
Oh, just, I guess, some general updates on what we've got going on. We broke ground this week for a new house in Hudson, so that's exciting. It's not it's been a while, I think, since Hudson's had a new house constructed. So,
where's that located in Hudson?
it is 304 South Main.
Okay, so in the main drag then.
It is, yes.
Okay.
And I guess by way of background, there were a group of concerned citizens that bought a dilapidated house that was for sale, I think about 3 years ago at this point, kind of ensured that it wouldn't fall into hands that either didn't have the desire to fix it up or do something with it. And so anyway, the old house, dilapidated house, was torn down, and the land donated to Stafford County Economic Development, and we've held it for the right opportunity to develop it. So that's what's happening now, and it's coinciding very nicely. There's a lot of activity in Hudson right now if you go through there, but it's coinciding nicely with the expansion of the Stafford County flour mills. So if you were in Hudson right now, you'd see a lot of construction activity around the flour mill. It's the first time in, I want to say, over 100 years that they've had that shut down. They have taken out the old original milling equipment and are putting in new equipment that will double the efficiency and the capacity of the flour mill there. So it's just a lot of exciting happenings there, and we hope that our housing development just, complements that really well.
Is this a K-State house, or is this?
It is the same design as the K-State, with some modifications, but the same fundamental design as the K-State house. What we did is we used that model as a prototype, and then we're able to, make the case for other grant funds to replicate it 9 times. So we will have the funds to do a house in Hudson, 3 in Stafford, 3 in St. John, and 1 in Maxville. Two in Maxville.
Okay. So how's this different, say, from the other construction that we had? And we'll just use Maxville for an example.
Well, we really gave those students a challenge to help us find a way to build housing at a more affordable price
Correct.
point.
Okay.
So the house in Maxville, even, in 2014, was over $300,000 to build. And it's great. I think the residents have been happy with it. We've had virtually no turnover. But it's not something that we have the ability to replicate because it's expensive and relative to the rent that we're able to charge in Stafford County. So we really challenged them with, we've got to find a way to build housing that is at least closer to the $100,000 price point than what we've been doing elsewhere. And what they came up with, we gave them that goal of $100,000, and I think it's been published in the media elsewhere that, hey, this is a $100,000 house. Well, in reality, the full true cost of it, I'm going to say, is between $135,000 to $150,000, which is still, not bad considering where current construction costs are and what they've done in the last year. So, we think we can safely build it for 150. We're doing some things with these 9 houses that will bring that cost down a little bit more. But when I think about what we could offer for others to finance and purchase, I think that's a reasonable quote to range to quote. And with that, you get a brand new 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house.
That you're renting, right?
We will be renting these first 9.
Okay.
And, we're actually looking at whether there's going to be some other grant funding available through some of the ARPA funds, and whether we can expand this program even beyond that with, maybe some flexibility to do either owner occupied housing or housing that's for rent, but without specific income restrictions.
Okay, what you're doing here is something that you go to any community across the state, especially in western Kansas or central Kansas, maybe anywhere, and that is finding new affordable housing, right? So how much first is this sparking interest from elsewhere, and the most important thing, maybe from the Kansas legislature or state representatives who want to learn more about this program that maybe could be copied and used elsewhere in these communities, or all fighting the same thing.
We are, and we already have gotten, some inquiries from around the state. When we did our open house and ribbon cutting with K-State, we had some statewide representation there. And, we are still proving it out. I think a big component in this is having contractors that are willing to do that type of work, or the strategy that we're using right now with the houses that we're beginning is that the contractor's self-performing almost all of it. So there's, I think, some savings in not having a number of subcontractors. And with that, it's just, I think finding contractors that either see the vision or have the staff in place and whatever to carry it out. That's a big factor, and it's not insignificant. We shopped this around to almost, I think, in the end, 20 contractors, and it's not something that everybody was either interested in, or if they were going to charge us something that was outside the range of what was affordable for this. So, as I look about what it will take to replicate it around the state, I don't know if we can kind of better quantify what the categories of costs are and help contractors see how to plan, and maybe how they can still find a profit in it, even though it is a house that's pretty basic. I had one contractor one time flat out tell me he would rather build one house worth $350,000 than three houses worth $115,000. And so, and it's because he knows how he can make profit on that $350,000 house. So I think if we can find a way to illustrate to them and give them a template on how they can be profitable with that, with the other model, maybe that's I think that's going to be a piece of how it is truly replicable around the state.
Well, if you have a model on how these go up, basically that's going to make, and plus maybe you get a volume discount. I don't know. I mean, okay, well, we got 9 of these coming up. I don't know.
Yeah. Some of the things I've been reflecting on are not only how we can kind of create a template for, the construction side of it, but also from the city side of things. We've been able to utilize some things from the cities, but if we can kind of create a list of, okay, if you want to do this in your town, you need to have the land in place. You need to, and donate that. You need to provide the water and sewer hookups. You need to, I don't know. There's 2 or 3 other things. I mean, if they're willing to share some of the cost of the construction through, say, water and sewer, then it may make the project eligible for a tax exemption on the cost of materials. And some of those things start to add up, and all of a sudden now you're kind of getting it into the price point that you need to have it in.
It's really interesting to see how these projects go, because one kind of builds on the other, and then where we're at right now. It's really fascinating to watch. So, Kansas State's probably got some pretty good feelings about it too. Is that a program they might take somewhere else, or
well, yeah.
And you did it during a pandemic too. That was an amazing thing.
It really took I give Michael Gibson, he's the assistant professor in architecture that oversaw the studio, and I give him so much credit for the fact that this got carried out. If he hadn't had the personal commitment to, I don't know if we even kept track of how many times he drove to St. John from Manhattan, and stayed here, through the week and just had a lot of commitment to carrying it out. If it hadn't been those people involved, we wouldn't have the house. So I think we can all take a lot of pride in the fact that it is a finished project and there is someone living there. And I don't know what K-State will do with it next. They've already gotten some recognition through their competition in the Department of Energy's academic.
I would think so, yeah.
Energy solar decathlon. So they receive some recognition nationally from that, and where they take it from here, I'm not sure.
How did that conversation start? You just call them up, say, hey, you guys want to come down here? And
Oh, I think I've told this story
I know, but
before.
it's like the Wizard of Oz. It's like I like hearing it every time, and then other people maybe haven't because it's.
Yeah, I happened to be on campus at a time my children were involved in a 4-H event there, and I chose to use the time to walk around campus, and I was trying to find the right ways to promote our availability of AmeriCorps positions. And since I'd heard that the College of Architecture and Design had a program in community development, I thought, well, community development, that's what we do. I'm going to go over there and see if I can post this somewhere. And I walked into the right office. Robin Gibson, who is the wife of Michael Gibson, the professor, she's later told me, goes, you looked very lost. I thought you needed help. But nonetheless, she listened to my
strategy. That's the strategy.
She listened to my what we were working on, what I was looking for to and she said, I think you need to meet my husband. And she put us together, and that's kind of how that started. He was interested in doing this type of residential construction and research, and we were interested in, I don't know, progress in the same area. So
what do you want to say, Kathleen?
I don't know. I mean, it's been a journey. I think, it's been, you were talking about like the development of the housing. Like there's been a lot learned, from the Maxville duplex to the renovation in Hudson, single family home in Stafford, this project with K-State. It's still figuring out what's going to work. How do you address it? And again, like we're not the only community who is struggling with this. And so I don't know. It's nice to know we're making progress because that's not necessarily how everyone feels about like our project. Like, when you're working on things, it takes time. Like this K-State house has been a 2-year project or more, like since making contact. And I think people don't realize how long things take. Construction just on the house that we did with K-State took a full year, essentially. Like when ground was broken and concrete poured was August of 2020. And to actually have it, done, someone moved in and do the ribbon cutting, it's August of 2021, which, these next houses will hopefully, be quicker, maybe, only like 3 to 4 months or, faster. It'll just depend. And so it was a learning experience for the students and us, but I don't know. It's like we're starting on, the 9 houses, but we've been talking about there's going to be 9 more for a little while. And people are like, well, we don't see anything. It's just hard, because it takes time. And it's like, we spent a year putting out bids to get a contractor and just like the struggle of trying to get people to submit bids, which are a requirement of the grants. You can't just, there's so much processes, especially with using grant funding, that I don't know, like there's a lot of behind the scenes. And so it's nice to have, this progress. And I know even just this morning, like we got a call from someone, I'm not sure where they were out of. It's interesting. Not everyone introduces themselves when they call wanting information, but they're like, well, we just read about your house and we want to know, all this stuff. And so you talk with them. But so I don't know, like it's interesting, and it will be interesting to kind of see how it goes and how things maybe take off or what, the next step is. I
think it's interesting to see how problem solving anymore. To really get something done, you have to think outside the box. Look at when, the grocery store, right? Yeah. You got to think outside the box and maybe go unconventional. And when you're doing something that's unconventional for the first time, it does take a little bit of time. But
yeah, I sometimes,
I remember
for one, this project, I would often remind people, it's not just about building houses. It's an educational project too, and so we have to have a little bit of grace for the amount of time it takes for that. But
wow, okay. We need to take a break here.
right.
Okay, and we will come back. I remember Carolyn came up. Yeah, we want this Port Authority. I said, well, we don't really have a big river down by St. John. We're gonna put a port in there. Well, how big of boats are going to be? Anyway, of course, we found out later what was going on, and that continues today. We'll take a break. Have more after this.
Hey folks, this is Trey Bergen with Ag 360 Insurance in St. John. We are an independent agency offering several types of insurance, including crop, farm, irrigation, business, personal, and life. We would appreciate an opportunity to earn your business. Feel free to stop by our office at 103 East 4th Avenue in St. John, or give us a call at 620-549-3579. You can also check us out online at ag360insurance.com.
The friendly staff at Stafford County Drug appreciates your patronage. The lobby is open and they offer a convenient drive-up window. They'll even deliver your prescriptions in Stafford, St. John, and Maxville for free. Stafford County Drug knows the value of a hard-earned dollar and wants to work with you and your doctor to make prescriptions easy. For any questions on switching your prescriptions to your local pharmacy, call pharmacist Chris Davis at 620-377-5633. Stafford County Drug, open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Inside White's Food Liner, Highway 281, St. John.
SJN Bank of Kansas knows the value of rural Kansas and is committed to all of the communities they serve, personal to business banking and more. They offer mobile banking options too. Download their app at SJN Bank of Kansas and find them online at sjnbank.com. Serving you since 1905 and with 6 locations. SJN Bank of Kansas in St. John, Maxville, Hudson, Burdett, Greensburg, and La Crosse. Member FDIC.
Welcome back. Focus on Stafford County. Carolyn Dunn, Kathleen Norman with us from Stafford County Economic Development. I just kind of laughed earlier when you were talking about going into that office and looking appeared lost, and that's a good strategy because that's what our salespeople do. That's what they teach. No, it's a good conversation starter. See, you've got this all down.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's good. Okay, I do want to touch on this and talk about your ability to act as a fiscal sponsor. And I'm talking about Stafford County Economic Development because some people might have questions about that and how that works.
Well, this came up recently. We had another nonprofit organization that was interested in applying for a grant for their organization, but they didn't have as much of a track record in doing grants behind them to be competitive in applying for it themselves. I think of it maybe a little bit like the idea that when you're young in your career and you want to apply for a job, but they ask for job experience, but you don't have job experience. And how do you get job experience if you don't get a job first,
Right.
So we can kind of, in a way, sponsor, in a way mentor, but sponsor an organization in certain situations to help with something like that. So that's what came up recently. In that case, economic development would apply for the grant on behalf of another organization, be responsible for the compliance of the grant, but pass the grant funds through in eligible ways to the second recipient. And, it allows them to kind of expand what they're doing, establish some track record of using grants, and hopefully be able to do so on their own. So, in the future. So, as we were kind of working through this, I had a board member that kind of asked more questions about, now, I make sure I understand fiscal sponsorship. And it kind of made me realize, okay, I should step back and make sure that, we all understand what that is. And secondly, for something like this, maybe it would be worth more people in the public understanding that that's a service that we can provide. So I thought, well, I'll just explain a little more about what that fiscal sponsorship policy is. So basically, it's the idea that we have the legal authority to accept and manage donations. But when we do so on behalf of another organization, we need a methodology to determine whether that proposed sponsorship is aligned with the mission and IRS approved purposes of economic development. We can't go do a fiscal sponsorship that is outside the range of what we're here to do and approved by the IRS to do. So there's limitations. But once the board assumes that, or looks at a proposal and determines that it is aligned with our goals to, combat community decline, it's of broad benefit, it's not for private benefit. There's a methodology we're kind of looking at that to make sure that it's aligned with our purposes, but then we can perform that service. We can accept funds and pass them through. It wouldn't have to just be a grant. So this, some of the newer board members asked, how have we used that over the course of time? And I thought, well, okay, here's some examples. So one example looked back several years ago, and there was an employee that worked for a corporation that had a matching program for its employees' charitable contributions. And they were interested in sponsoring playground improvements in Hudson during a time that funds were being raised by the Hudson Community Club for that purpose. Well, the Hudson Community Club has a bank account, but not a lot of formal organization around it, and certainly not a 501c3. That corporate donation had to be distributed, though, to a 501c3. So what the board did was determine that this purpose, playground equipment in Hudson, was consistent with the goals and mission of economic development. And so that individual then was able to make the contribution, the donation to Stafford County Economic Development. We received the corporate match for that and then passed that full amount through to the Hudson group that was doing playground improvements. So that was one example. Another example was when there was improvements to the fountain in St. John City Square. And there was an individual that was interested in making a contribution to offset some of the costs of the refurbishing of the fountain. They had an IRA that could be used to make that donation, but the IRA needed to be distributed to a 501c3, not to the city directly. So again, we made the determination that it was consistent with our purposes of broad community benefit. We received the contribution from the IRA directly and passed it through the city to make offset the cost of refurbishing the city fountain. Another example was that an individual wanted to see a mural painted in St. John and was willing to pay the cost. A grant opportunity through the Kansas Creative Arts Industry Commission presented the opportunity to match that donation. This was kind of, we accepted this under the fiscal sponsorship policy that we have, although in a way you could have also interpreted it that was our project for which we had sponsors. We kind of processed it as a fiscal sponsorship because we didn't put any funds toward it. We only used funds on this project that were provided to us specifically for the project. But here's the thing. We had a little bit of ownership in it, too, because we owned the lot on which this all was happening. So it was another reason, the partnership made sense. But nonetheless, we did it under our fiscal sponsorship agreement. And we carried out all the financial activities funded by the grant and spent some considerable time on it. That's maybe a little different than some truly just pure physical sponsorships. But, it was a good example of how, though, an individual's desire and contribution was able to be accomplished in a way through us as a 501c3 that it wouldn't have been able to have been done just individually or without the 501c3. So those are some examples. And so I guess I just want it to be more broadly understood that we can perform those kinds of services within our community countywide.
Which is even another arm, I guess, of Stafford County Economic Development then, right?
Yeah.
Gives you some more options, and when people want to get involved with things like that, so they just call you up and say, hey, I've got all this money here that I want to give to this project here, and I think it'd benefit the community. So,
right.
Wow.
Right.
And there is an application process with that. So if people are interested, they contact our office, and we have an application process. And the Board of Directors for Economic Development has to approve the application. And then we move forward with a formal agreement of what is being asked of the fiscal sponsorship, because there is some variety in what happens.
So we want some clarity on who's responsible for what, and just kind of some clarification of the expectations of how that's all going to be carried out. And it's not without limitations, So I think an easy example of where this would not be able to be accomplished is if, say, a group wants to go in and buy a building and put a store in it, like a community-owned store. If they own it as individuals, as an LLC, we can't accept donations to pass through to the LLC that's owned privately. That would be seen by the IRS as being private benefit. So there are limitations, and we have to go through that process of evaluating it. But it's worth having the conversation with us to see if we can help. Great information. Economic development directors from across the state listening and going to grapeinpost.com to see what's going on down in Stafford County. All right. That's fantastic. Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks, Kathleen. We'll talk to you guys next month. That is Focus on Stafford County here on 1590 KVGB and 95.5 FM.